Manchester United's first Premier League match of the new season ends in defeat. Ruben Amorim has a serious problem at the goalkeeping position, but there are a lot of positives to take away from this match. Alright, let's just go ahead and start with the obvious, which was Altay Bayındır's mistake for Arsenal's one and only goal in this game. Another situation where United gets undone from a defensive set-piece situation. It's just, at this point, it's getting frustrating. I said it in my preview video that we have to be more consciously aware of how we defend these set pieces, especially going up against Set Piece FC. They've proved time and time again, not just last season, but ever since Arteta has been coach, that they have threats in the box for set pieces. Gabriel, Saliba, they're always constantly going to be a threat. Today we saw an individual error by Bayındır instead of a comedy of errors from the entire team like the Fiorentina goal. This is not good. This is kind of worrying because we already don't have faith in Andre Onana. So for Bayındır to constantly make these howlers, because he did something like this similarly last season against Spurs, where he just wasn't strong enough in net. You have to be a commanding keeper, especially in the Premier League, knowing how big and physical these center backs are. They're going to look to get on the end of these crosses from the corner. So it's just disappointing. Once again, we find ourselves at the end of an individual error that kind of cost us the entire game. And I said it in my preview video, but I said it as if Onana was going to come back. If Onana came back and cost us the game with a costly error, it would undo all of the hard and good work that we had done prior to this game and during this game. And Bayındır's mistake in goal really changed the outcome for Manchester United. I thought United, by and large, throughout the entire game, were dominant. They were on the front foot. Arsenal looked flat. Arsenal didn't look like they had really come to play, or they didn't look like they were ready to kick into second and third gear. And at the same time, United looked like they were willing to go forward and attack and defend and defend in numbers. But unfortunately, what happens at the end of the day, if you don't score from the chances that you miss and the other team scores from an individual error or however it may be, you lose. It doesn't matter how well you played. And I thought United did play well. But we'll get into all of these things. I just wanted to start by saying, yeah, Bayındır. I mean, this is not good. Manchester United need to address the keeper situation ASAP. We cannot continue to have these mistakes. And there's no telling that Onana will come back from his injury and just start to perform, to the levels and standards that we thought he was going to. So it's really a sticky situation for United. Number 2, who's not good enough. Number 1, who's not good enough. And when Ruben Amorim was asked why he, isn't thinking about starting Tom Heaton, listen to what he had to say in his defense of Altay Bayındır.
The next one, Arsenal. Who saved the penalty? Who saved the game? All the game. You don't remember the game. I remember the game.
Yes, he saved.
Altay was unbelievable in that game. So I consider everything to put one on another, and I choose Altay.
Now, I'm all for the gaffer defending his players. I'm all for the gaffer shooing away the criticism of the media, of the fans. It's game day 1. Like I said, Bayındır, other than that mistake, did actually have good moments in this game. His distribution was really good, which is confusing because in preseason, his distribution was terrible. Either way, this is a cause for concern. I'm not entirely sure how Amorim is going to address this privately with Bayındır, but something needs to change. Something needs to happen quickly because we cannot continue to have these errors on set pieces, giving up cheap goals to these teams who then will just sit back and frustrate us when we try to get an equalizer. Moving on to something a bit more positive, I want to kind of highlight some of the standout performers that I saw today. I thought Mason Mount, starting as a left 10, was actually so influential. He was top today. I think his passing range and his vision really unlocked and unsettled Arsenal's defense. He was really making defense-splitting passes to Mbeumo, getting us in behind, getting us into situations where we can isolate Arsenal's defenders and put them into troubling situations. I really thought Mount was good at just being a nuisance as well. He was tracking back. He was doing his defensive duties. He's the type of player that I can tell Amorim really likes because of his energy, but he also has the good technique. He can also back it up with his passing range, his vision, his teamwork. He just seems to be an all-round put together player. And Mbeumo was also a standout performer for me. He was able to get on the end of these balls from Mason Mount, take them into his stride, and attack his defender. Calafiori had an extremely busy day dealing with Mbeumo and also dealing with the overlap from Diogo Dalot. I'll talk about all of this later in the episode, but still, I wanted to highlight how good Mason Mount and Mbeumo, that connection was. It seemed like Mason Mount, Cunha, and Mbeumo have a good understanding. I think we really lacked a focal point once again. This formation, this system, whatever you want to say about it, it requires a focal point, and we desperately needed one today. Mateus Cunha did his utmost best to try and get us back into the game. He was passionate, he was driving forward, he was energetic, he was powerful. Like I said, though, at the end of the day, these guys can score, these guys can finish, but they're not that clinical, ruthless striker that we've been looking for. Much rather see Cunha operate as a 10. I'd much rather see Mbeumo operate as a 10. They get into these positions by sheer willpower or by an unlocking through pass. But at the end of the day, if they can't finish to the level and standard that would have gotten us back into this game, then at the end of the day, we need somebody who can do that. Bringing on Šeško later in the game was good to give us a focal point, but it was a little too late. I mean, he just couldn't really get himself into the game 100%. He couldn't get on the ball as much. He wasn't able to actually be a threat in behind. But these are things that will come. I'm just saying that Mason Mount, Mbeumo, and Cunha, that front three was actually very influential today. It just lacked that clinical nature, that finish that we really needed to get ourselves back into the game and potentially even win more. I also want to mention the individual defending that I saw from the likes of De Ligt, from Lenny Yoro. I thought De Ligt was really good today. He ushered Gyökeres really out of the game completely. Gyökeres really tried to impose his physicality on Matthijs de Ligt, and I think he actually ended up just wearing himself out. He was constantly asked to hold up the ball, constantly asked to drop deep, to link up play with his teammates. And I feel like Gyökeres is the type of striker that kind of wants to stretch his legs a little bit, kind of wants to test the defenders. He's a strong guy, don't get me wrong. But using that strength against another physical player like De Ligt, or sometimes Euro would help out, it just kind of seemed like Gyökeres had nowhere to go, and that kind of slowed down Arsenal's attack. Obviously, they want their new striker to be involved in the play. They want to get the ball to their focal point. It just wasn't working today, and I think that was a testament to De Ligt's excellent defending, his excellent tracking, movement, mobility, all of these things. He was winning his aerial duels. Lenny Euro on the right-hand side, just again, another stellar performance. He's a solid player that will give you at least a 7 out of 10 every game. Great in the 1v1 situation. He's great at progressing the ball forward. There were times where Bayern would pass the ball to De Ligt, who had kind of created that box where he would go alongside Casemiro. De Ligt would pass it to Euro. Euro would have the space and time to progress the ball, progress us up the field. And Euro is good at that. He's a quick player as well, has good IQ. So I was really impressed by that. The back line today for me was good. I didn't see too many issues. I didn't see too many situations where we were just completely exposed and left open. Obviously, we conceded a goal from a set piece, which is not ideal. But like I said, individual errors need to remove themselves from this team because the work we did today was actually fantastic. And finally, before I just show a couple of clips, a couple of things that I noticed that United did good today, I wanted to talk about our midfield because going into the game, I saw the midfield of Bruno and Casemiro, and I thought to myself, is Ruben Amorim trying to prove a point? Is he trying to prove something to the board that this midfield is not what I want, but this is the choice that I have to make? Because as we saw later, Ugarte coming on, he was absolutely awful. He was awful. Like, he's just not what we need in this system. He just doesn't fully work. Against teams like Arsenal, who are technically sound, who are high in quality all over the pitch, Ugarte just doesn't work. He doesn't. His touch is loose. I feel a lot of the times he can just lose his head in important situations. There was a time where he gave the ball straight to Kai Havertz. There was a time where, knowing his profile and his player, knowing who he is, he took a long shot when he didn't need to. Composure was needed in those situations. And throughout the game, I thought we actually showed good composure, but we seriously need a midfielder. We seriously need a midfielder. I think it was Graham Lasso or Lee Dixon for the NBC broadcast. They basically said Manchester United cannot go the entire season with Casemiro in that midfield. I'm starting to think we can't even go the next 5 games with Casemiro or Ugarte in the midfield. Not to say that Casemiro had a terrible game. Once again, it was a hot and cold performance for me. I thought he did what he was supposed to in moments, but at the same time, his physicality really was exposed when Odegaard at one point was sprinting through the middle of the pitch. Odegaard, who's not even that quick, and Casemiro looked like he was struggling to get back. These are the things that I noticed, and I'm sure a lot of fans noticed too. And if we had somebody of a more physical output, somebody who can just bust a gut running up and down the pitch, somebody who's quick as well, somebody who's eager to win the ball back. I think Casemiro is always eager to win it back, but his physical limitations really hold him and us back. So that's another thing. I didn't think Bruno had a terrible game. I didn't think he had an amazing game. I thought he was just kind of there, kind of indifferent. The game was really impacted a lot by our 10s. Like, they really impacted the game a lot, and our wingbacks bombing forward. But let me get into that now because I'm just going to go on a tangent if I don't. I think United were actually very successful in large portions of this game at breaking down Arsenal, getting in behind, trying their best to get into the attacking positions that would get them the best opportunity to get a shot on goal. I thought United were good, especially using the width. Patrick Dorgu, Diogo Dalot as wingbacks were effectively doing their job, getting forward, creating 2v1 situations constantly that put Arsenal on the back foot. There were situations where, like I mentioned earlier in the video, Mason Mount would switch the ball over to Mbeumo, and Mbeumo would take on Calafiori, but Diogo Dalot would always support as an overlapping option, which would always give Calafiori a headache. He'd either have to go with Dalot and leave Mbeumo to cut inside and take the shot on his left, or he'd have to commit to Mbeumo and leave Dalot in acres of space. There were a couple of times where Dalot had tons of space to pick a pass. The problem with United in this game was there was nobody crashing the box. There was no attacking intent. There was no killer instinct to get themselves into a position to at least trouble the goalkeeper. This is a little bit why I was confused as to why Højlund has just been completely left out of the squad. This is a player who constantly makes those runs into the box, but doesn't get the ball. And now when the players have finally started to utilize the overlap, they've started to finally utilize the space that's left and behind and to get crosses into the box, nobody's there to receive the crosses into the box. It's poor. That's something that I really noticed that was frustrating about United in this game. But at the same time, it was really good to see how expansive we were, how we were able to go from point A to point B in one simple pass. And from there, we were able to really drive at the opponent, frustrate them, peg them back, use our options. I thought that was really good from Mbeumo and Dalot on the right-hand side. We really utilized that in the first half. I think on the other side, Patrick Dorgu was doing the same thing, but to a little bit different effect. I feel like he was allowing the ball to find him in acres of space. There were times where he would get the ball and then he would take about, I don't even know, a touch and immediately just look forward to try and drive into the space that was left by Arsenal. It was another situation where, again, Mason Mount would kind of do his job in the middle of the park, supporting Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro, unleashing Patrick Dorgu, who had time and space to get forward. It kind of, like I said, put Ben White on the back foot, kind of forced him to kind of stay in his position and not free roam and not venture too much. Arsenal's tactical setup today was interesting. They were essentially playing with two inverted fullbacks. And I'll get into that a little bit later as I talk about their setup briefly. But they were playing with two inverted fullbacks, which left a lot of space in behind for our 10s. Now, Mason Mount is not the type of player to run into space, but if Dorgu was going to be there, unoccupied, alone, in tons of space, that switch was always on. And I thought Dorgu did a good job of just using his athleticism to get forward and create issues for Arsenal's defense. Now, I mentioned this earlier in the video as well, but I thought Bayindyr's distribution today was pretty good. I thought he was able to pick out passes, especially in the middle of the park, that normally wouldn't really work. I think Arsenal kind of dropped off a little bit too easily from their first line of press, which was, I think, Gyökeres, Martinelli, Saka, and Odegaard. It was kind of like a four-man press. There was just a huge gap in the midfield for Bruno to occupy space, or for Casemiro to occupy space, or for even Matheus Cunha to come deep and receive the ball and turn and drive into space. I thought Bayindyr's distribution was really good in this way, and it allowed us to diversify our attacking movements. A lot of the times, last season, it was way too predictable to know what Manchester United would do going forward. But today, I saw different patterns of play. I saw different things where Manchester United was able to break down Arsenal in a variety of ways, which is very encouraging because this is one of the strongest teams in the division. This gives me a lot of encouragement for playing against Fulham, who I watched their game against Brighton. Not the greatest performance by Fulham whatsoever. It was a scrappy game, don't get me wrong. Very scrappy game. And I think we can come to expect that when we play them. But the thing that I saw with United today was poise, especially from certain players where I did not think. Like I said, I didn't think Bayindyr had the greatest time distribution-wise in preseason. But in this game, he was finding passes. And from those passes, we were able to quickly spring into life, which is something that I'm really excited to see this United team do on a weekly basis. The players are not going to be as fatigued, so they could continue to learn and repeat these actions and get better and sharper and faster and do these things at a more consistent and concise rate. And obviously, one of the most important ways that we were able to break Arsenal down was the individual skill of some of our really technical players. Bruno Fernandes had an excellent touch in the second half from a Bayindyr, I think it was a Bayindyr pass, One touch, boom, he's taken his defender out of the game, and he plays a defense splitting pass into Mbumo. It didn't work out just because Gabriel is a great recovery defender. But these are the individual moments where we were able to break through Arsenal's press and immediately spring into life. I thought Cunha's individual skill was amazing today. There were numerous occasions where he was able to take the ball, turn, get past his defender, and create an opportunity for us. There was that long gut-busting run that he had in the first half where he took on like 4 Arsenal players, and you could tell by the end of the move when he shot that he ran out of steam. But those were the encouraging signs. Those are the things that we hadn't seen in Manchester United for a long time. Last time we had a ball carrier like that, probably Marcus Rashford back when he was actually up and moving. But ever since then, I don't think Garnacho has done anything like that. He wasn't as poised. And I don't want to talk about those guys. I'm just kind of relating to how United have finally found the key. These players seem to really make sense for what Amorim wants. And this system really seemed to gel today. It worked today. Obviously, we need to be more clinical in the final third. But I liked how we were able to get through Arsenal's press. Arsenal held a high line, so we were able to play balls in behind Arsenal and use our pace to our advantage. The final third product needs to improve. We need to be more clinical once we get into the final third. Raya is an excellent keeper, so he was always bound to have a good game. He made some tremendous saves, but at the end of the day, these are opportunities that we cannot waste against Arsenal or against Burnley or against Brighton or whoever it may be. We need to be more clinical. This is exactly why we signed these players. Like I said, many different ways that Manchester United were able to break down Arsenal. Now let's talk about Arsenal's build-up and how we were actually able to effectively slow them down, force them to recycle, and kind of play them into our hands, essentially. I just wish we would have done more going forward and punished them for kind of their lackadaisical approach. But let's get into it. So I mentioned it a bit briefly in this video, but Arsenal were playing an interesting way, especially when building up. On paper, their formation was a 4-2-3-1 with Calafiori and Ben White as the fullbacks. But whenever Arsenal got the ball, Zubimendi would drop into a back three with Saliba and Gabriel. And Odegaard would be kind of a roaming playmaker. He would always be roaming in positions. No matter where it was on the pitch, he would be there, trying to give Arsenal another creative outlet as Zubimendi progressed the ball forward. Calafiori and Ben White would then act almost as like 8s, pretty much. Like they would be really high up the pitch, operating like I said, the 8 position. They were operating high up the pitch in midfield positions, giving Arsenal 2 extra bodies in midfield along with Declan Rice. So they were trying their best to stretch us and expand us. The only problem is Manchester United stayed compact. Manchester United did their defensive homework, and it forced Arsenal to constantly recycle. I noticed how many times this way of build-up for Arsenal forced Gyökeres into coming short to try and hold off his man and to lay a pass off. But there were times where that failed. There were times where that couldn't really work. So what it did was force Arsenal to go back and try again, restart, and eventually Manchester United kind of caught wind to this. It was a back and forth tactical affair which made the game seem boring. I could tell that both teams were trying to really figure each other out. For United, I wish that it didn't have to be the case that we went a goal down, because I feel like we had control of the game and eventually Arsenal would have cracked. Arteta would have tried his best to go forward and get something from the game. It's whatever. It is what it is. I just noticed that Arsenal were doing this constantly, dropping Zubimendi deep, and Zubimendi was always going to be their focal point in terms of their orchestration and build-up. He was always going to be the guy to get onto the ball first and then spring Odegaard into life, spring Declan Rice into life. I didn't think Rice had the greatest game. I thought he was pretty quiet. Odegaard was making moves. He was hot and cold. Saka, Martinelli, I mean, all of these players were kind of quiet. They didn't really do much today. It was just the individual error by Bayern that really set us back and really changed the outcome of this entire match. Honestly, guys, my final takeaways from this game was it was a good performance. I'm so much more okay with Manchester United losing a game like this if the performance was good, if Manchester United put up a fight. If we had kind of just rolled over and let Arsenal take the game to us, it would be another same old situation for United. In a way, it sort of is, because Binder's mistake is just another reason as to why we cannot continue to have players who are prone to individual errors. This is the Premier League. We've been kind of let down tremendously by Binder. And I know that Ruben Amorim defended him in the press conference, which is great. I stand by that. But at the same time, I also stand by the fact that we need another keeper. We need another goalkeeper. We don't need a flashy keeper. We don't need somebody who's unsure. We need somebody who can stand in that goal, command his box, command the area talk, be communicative, and win aerial duels. I mean, why do we have keepers who are so frail and weak when it comes to being pegged down? David Raya is about 6 foot tall, 6'2" at the most. Not the most physically imposing person, but yet he's strong and commands his area well. He gets down low quick. He's able to do things that I wish our keepers could do instead of making silly mistakes. I'm not going on a rant by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that Manchester United can actually be a really good and shocking and surprising team this season. But if we are going to continue to concede goals like this and lose points because of errors like this, then what is it for? What does it matter if we play so well? And that's a frustration that I know a lot of United fans probably feel, is just we played well, but we still get nothing from it. That cannot continue to happen because we have the toughest starting fixture list in the Premier League. You know, we have to get going. We have to get these individual errors out. Like I said, there were positives that I saw today, but we still need to iron out a few things to become the team that we want to become. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what you thought of the game. I thought, like I said, it was a good performance from United. Just need to clean a few things up. Let me know what you're expecting moving forward from United, especially in the goalkeeping position, the midfield position. Who do you want to see come in as a goalkeeper? I've talked about it time and time again how I want Karnaseki to come in. If we have the money, we should go ahead and splash it on someone like Karnaseki. Very good and commanding his box. Very good reflexes. Doesn't make mistakes. Constantly in the top 4 of clean sheets in the Serie A. But people also want Lamens, who's a good goalkeeper as well, a good option. Who do you guys want to see come in and kind of just give us more assuredness in the goalkeeping position? Let me know what you guys think. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate it greatly. As always, guys, God bless and have a wonderful day.